Today on History's Tech, we are looking at the development of the Mig-17. Now, this aircraft, which was based on the Mig-15 platform, was the transitional aircraft for aircraft of this era to begin working on transonic flight capabilities. Now, as I've talked about before, the Mig-17 is just a series of MiG developments, starting with the MiG-9 and then later into the ever more famous Mig-15. And as famous as the Mig-15 it did have some problems due to issues with its initial development and building, and the fact that it couldn't compete with the faster and faster bombers that it was built to intercept. There was a need for a faster version of the Mig-15. Now, unlike the Mig-15, the Mig-17 was designed as a transonic aircraft. By building new, thinner wings that were more highly swept wing in design, along with tailplanes that were similar, they designed an aircraft that was able to handle speeds near Mach 1 much easier. This meant that many of the Mig-15's issues that it had while approaching the sound barrier had been eliminated. However, it was not capable of fully achieving supersonic flight. Now, interestingly enough, development of the aircraft actually finished in 1951, and the aircraft was supposed to be produced and introduced during the Korean War to be more competitive against aircraft such as the F-86 Sabre. And it did not even begin production until almost a year after they had initially wanted it to, around the same time the Mig-19 was almost ready to be tested. The Mig-17 would see its first combat 6 years after its introduction during the Second Taiwan Straits Crisis, when it would go up against the Republic of China's F-86 Sabres in 1958. The aircraft gained further notoriety in 1958 when it shot down a C-130 on the Turkey-Armenian border during a reconnaissance mission. But the aircraft's real claim to fame came during the Vietnam War. In 1962, the first North Vietnamese pilots trained to utilize the Mig-17 had completed their education in the Soviet Union and had been sent back with a gift of 36 Mig-17 fighters to create the first North Vietnamese fighter jet regiment. And it was these pilots of this unit that would be the first ones to take on the American supersonic jets before the Soviets sent them the MiG-19 and 21s. Early engagements between American fighter aircraft and the Mig-17 were mixed, and there has been some issues similar to the Mig-15 where each side claiming more kills than they had of the other. However, the Mig-17 did prove that it was capable of going against modern-day fighters such as the F-100 or the F-4 Phantom. While not as fast as either one of these aircraft, it proved to be way more maneuverable, gaining an advantage in dogfights. The Vietnamese developed a new tactic of attacking American aircraft, essentially a guerrilla warfare style of attack where they would move in incredibly fast, open up with their guns, and then leave before the Americans could have a chance to respond. And due to reliability issues with early air-to-air missiles, the MiGs actually had an advantage. Add to this the development of the Air Force Operation Feather Duster, where they were trying to determine how much better the Mig-15 and the Mig-17 were against American forces, and the decision was made to place guns back on all future fighters, thus meaning the Mig-17 is partially responsible for returning guns to American aircraft, which was in the process of being eliminated. By the time the Mig-17 was replaced with the Mig-19 and 21, it had become the standard fighter for all members of the Warsaw Pact. Soviet allied countries such as Egypt, Syria, Sri Lanka, Nigeria all heavily relied on the Mig-17 as their main aircraft. Eventually, 3 licensed copies would be allowed by the Soviets to the Polish, the Czechs, and to the Chinese. Including the 3 license-built copies of the Mig-17, there was more than a dozen variants built for this aircraft. And most of these variants were designed to just be improvements of the Mig-17. New cannons, the ability to carry rockets or air-to-air missiles, or even afterburning engines to achieve supersonic flight. However, the most important variant was the one where they decided to add twin engines to it, thus developing the Mig-19. With the exception of one country, almost all Mig-17s were replaced by the Mig-19 in the 1970s, with North Korea being the only country flying any type of Mig-17. However, they are flying the Chinese-made variants, the Shenyang F-5s. Now, because more than 10,000 aircraft were produced amongst 4 production facilities, there are actually dozens and dozens of these aircraft displayed around the world, with 17 of them being in private hands in the United States alone, making the MiG-17 a rather interesting collector's piece. However, be careful if you try to own one. There have been some issues brought up about importing them into the United States and the legality of it. But there you have it, a real quick look at the MiG-17, essentially a stepping stone for the Soviet Union to develop a supersonic aircraft. While, yes, it does get easily confused with the MiG-15, and even some people confuse it with the MiG-19, its legacy towards dogfighting and actually pushing the United States towards introducing guns back onto aircraft cannot be ignored. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you on the next time.